But it's sweet, I guess, when people came 2 hours late. First of all, I guess I just wanted, again, to thank you guys all for coming and the various partners that made this possible. Bridgespan has been a huge, huge supporter of ours. In fact, when we started looking at U.S. expansion, which was about a year and a half ago, they've been gracious in making their office available to Radhika, introducing us to their networks, and really making us feel part of the family here. And I really wanted to just, first of all, thank Rohit, Jeff Braddock, and the entire Bridgespan team, Sonali as well in the back. And it's just been fantastic to have groups like Bridgespan that we work with on an ongoing basis here. As you can tell by my accent, while we live in India, I was originally born and brought up in the US, in Houston. And the first time, in fact, Neera and I came to San Francisco was in 2003. We were fortunate that my mother actually went to India and left her car in Houston. Neera had just quit her job from investment banking, her post-business school, and so we had close to $100,000 in debt. And we were emailing a funder, a technology entrepreneur on the West Coast, living in San Francisco, who we had never met before, but it seemed like a promising lead. And being sort of bootstrapping at the time and having a free vehicle, we decided to sort of pack the car with tents in the back and drive all the way to San Francisco to meet this one technology entrepreneur, to talk about this sort of model that we had. It was our first time, like I said, meeting the individual. We talked quite a bit about how we would build capacity for organizations, how we would invest in second-line management, how we looked at unrestricted capital as the main source of scaling organizations from ground up. And surprisingly, this technology entrepreneur, while he was fairly new to this space, him and his wife readily agreed to not just support Dasra, but more importantly, some of the organizations that we were supporting with the same belief. And I think it's just been a fantastic time period. Fast forward to today, sort of 12 years later, and just hearing some of the conversations we've had in the room, that it's about time Silicon Valley has caught up to this conversation. And you're talking about unrestricted capital, you're talking about long-term funding, you're talking about networks, you're talking about investing in the communication for not only these organizations, but really the investment of impact assessment tools that can enable these organizations to make smarter business decisions and communicate with their investors more effectively. And so it's a real honor for us, I think, to be at sort of the hotbed of innovation and see a lot of the work that we've been trying to do in a very, very, very small way over the many, many years, being sort of the norm here at Stanford. It's also an honor to just be at Stanford. I think we were really shocked and surprised when, after a few calls and a few meetings, we were given the opportunity to even host a gathering like this at the university. I mean, this is clearly the bastion of innovation, and it's a real honor for us to not only be here hosting this gathering, but more importantly, I think, for the entrepreneurs and the great development work that's happening in India to be broadcast and showcased at such a prestigious institution such as Stanford University. I mean, I think Safira brought the point up of maybe the next fulcrum or place of gathering, I think, for innovation is universities, and what better place to do that than here. To give you guys a little bit of story behind Dasra and more importantly, what we do, it's actually been talked about quite a bit on the various panels, whether it was Renee talking about Skoll Foundation and how they look at mezzanine organizations and providing them unrestricted capital to grow. That's something we've been doing for a couple of years. In fact, the first organization that we sort of created a giving circle on with that same intent was the Educate Girls story that she spoke about. This was in 2010. We had a large Indian family foundation actually support the research of girls' education and various opportunities that they could support. After looking at about 70 to 80 organizations across the country, we honed in on Safina Hussain, who started Educate Girls. Their budget at the time was close to $125,000 to $140,000, and they were working in 500 schools. What was great about their model was that they were actually empowering the girls in the community to become leaders and convince others to join schools. They worked not only with the girls, but also with the parents of these individuals, of these girls, highlighting these parents as heroes of the community, getting awards at village level panchayat committees, and really recognizing the risks that these parents took to actually send their girls to school. When we met Safina Hussain, similar to Pratima's story with Shelter, she had a very small team. She had very little management in the organization. Most of the funds that she had were to deliver programs versus building institutions. That's really where Dasra came in. We are strong believers of the need of institutional building, management, cost, and impact assessment. We're strong believers of not just backing the right entrepreneur, but as Charlie and Lisa said numerous times, focusing on the impact that that organization can create and really providing them whatever it takes to get there. That really formulated in 2010, 11 years after we started, the Dasra Giving Circle model. In essence, what this is we get 10 philanthropists, now from around the world, each committing $50,000. Again, to Charlie Kleisner's point about Tonic, we do 9 months of research, and we share this with every single person in the world on our website, through events like this, open sourcing, everything we do, ensuring that the research is not just for 10 philanthropists or foundations, but more importantly can be utilized by anyone who wants to make smarter investment decisions in the philanthropic or impact investing space. Post that, we actually find these organizations, support them to present stronger 3 to 5 year operational and business plans, and then we take them to investors. The first time we did this, like I said, was with a group called Educate Girls in 2010. Their budget, like I said, was about $120,000 to $140,000. They were reaching out to 500 schools. Fast forward to today, they recently won the Skoll Award, giving them $1.25 million worth of support. We've helped them raise an additional $8 million of support, and by 2018, they'll be in 15,000 schools. And so, similar to private equity or the VC world that you guys are all accustomed to, you first spend a ridiculous amount of time to pick the right entrepreneur. Number two, you help those entrepreneurs with their pitches, with their plans, and then post-funding, you actually provide them not just support on the unrestricted capital side, helping them build the management teams, put impact assessment systems in place, create stronger plans, but you also provide hands-on support to enable them to grow their team. The whole creation or success of private equity and VC is not just the capital that's given to these organizations, but more importantly, the managerial support and the access to networks that these organizations, these private equity shops, et cetera, are able to provide their entrepreneurs, enabling them to scale. That's in essence what the Dasra model is and has been. We're proud to say in 2000, one of the first organizations we funded was this group called Magic Bus, which was spoken about. Back then, their total budget was actually what we had covered, which was about $20,000 a year. We told them they could only use that money to hire a strong management team and start thinking about the impact they're going to create. By year one, where their budget was $25,000, like I said, we gave them $20,000. We told them they had to raise the additional $5,000 from outside. By year three, their budget went to $250,000. We still paid $20,000 to cover the management cost. They were able to bring in capital from other sources, enabling sort of the handing off of the baton, which another speaker spoke about today, from one funder to the next. And that's really where Dasra comes in. Our giving circle model is just a way that we've tried to democratize our giving, where before we used to work with philanthropists and funders who individually gave $200,000 to $300,000 a year. Now we sort of split that up amongst 10 individuals. The first 3 giving circles, whether it was an Educate Girls, a Mukthangan, or a group called Sneha, which does some phenomenal work in Mumbai slums, we focused on just getting Indian philanthropists residing in India to participate. I'm going to repeat that. In 2010 and 11, when many people were looking at the West to give funds, we decided we would focus just on the Indian contingency, realizing that their not only access to capital, but more importantly, their intelligence on what's happening on the ground perhaps was greater than somebody sitting 10,000 miles away. And so the first 3 circles that we had raised, we got, like I said, between $500,000 to $750,000 worth of capital. These were the longest commitments and largest commitments many of these Indian philanthropists have made. And they were not just from sort of the ultra high net worth individuals, but many of them were professionals living in and around Mumbai who realized there was a smarter way to give and there was a need to be part of a community when they started giving these organizations financial and managerial support. We're proud to say last year the Dasra Giving Circle was nominated, according to NPC, a group which Peter and Charlie spoke about, as one of the top 10 global innovations, and only recently we have allowed non-Indians to participate in this, again realizing that the need of capital and hopefully the leveraging of the research and the collaborative is far greater than what we have in India. The point of these gatherings is really to talk about not only the innovations that you see in front of you, but hopefully the many others that we have on our website. We have 46 different sector research reports, anywhere from disaster mitigation, where we were fortunate with the Global Fund for Children to bring partners from Hurricane Katrina, the Pakistan earthquake, and the Asian tsunami together in Mahabalipuram, of all places, to learn about community mobilization post-disasters. It was there we realized that some of the Indian organizations in Mahabalipuram and the movements that the government had taken along the fishermen community in Tamil Nadu was actually far greater than what happened right here in New Orleans. One of our NGO partners, Dreamcatchers, that was working with fishermen and communities who had lost lives, were so moved by the stories they heard in New Orleans, they actually spent a 9-month sabbatical moving to New Orleans and working with communities within the inner cities, getting a first-hand glimpse of gang violence and how families were not just affected by Hurricane Katrina, but unfortunately, in most cases, had various other elements which had put them in the place that they were. This particular head of the organization came back to India, and I remember she said that if she had a choice, she feels that the inner communities of America, in fact, are more marginalized because of drugs and guns violence than even what we've seen in India. And I think that's really what the Dasra Philanthropy Forum is about. It's about bringing people together who care about a particular issue and work together, even though the geographies may be different, even the situations may be different, but crossing those boundaries and those divides to really make the world a better place. And I know that sounds cheesy, but that's something that drove both Neera and I to take sort of the $100,000 in loans, drive to San Francisco, meet a donor who's here today, and really give us the sort of support that we needed to get started. I think the conversation needs to be, again, like Charlie said, around impact, and more importantly, not what your money can do, but how you can use your money as a catalytic source to drive more capital, networks, and resources into the sector. What Dasra has been able to do honestly started with my second-year bonus at Morgan Stanley. What we've been able to do since then is raise an additional $50 million worth of capital for the nonprofit sector. And we had no networks. We had no access to capital. We came from very middle-class families, yet it was this desire to not only change the world, but realization that the only way we can do it is with partners such as those in the room. And so while this is our first time doing an event in San Francisco, it is sort of like coming home, whether it's the Kleisners who supported us early on, Matthew Bannock who enabled us through their Omidyar Network grant grow from 25 people to 75 people, Raymond who's unfortunately left, who really gave us the USAID grant, enabling us to bring partners like the Piramal Foundation alongside Kiowa Trust and others to make a movement across the 120 million adolescent girls that live in India today. And so if you leave here with 3 things, I think number 1 is dream big, because you can do much more than what we were able to do or have done in our short amount of time. Number 2, do more than give capital. Use your networks. Safira made a great point. It's not just about writing checks, it's about talking about the need to write checks. Whether it's India, whether it's East Palo Alto, it doesn't really matter. But it's important to be sort of strategic philanthropy needs to be part of your life. And number 3, in the various phenomenal social organizations you support, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, give them unrestricted capital to do what they knew best. There was a fantastic article in the New York Times that was written about 2 weeks ago about Silicon Valley philanthropists and entrepreneurs and the differences between East Coast giving and West Coast giving. And I think it's something that we should all realize, because many times I think if you're a technology entrepreneur, it is very easy to create a solution with an 11-member team that goes viral and goes global. But reality is when we're looking at behavioral change, changing societal norms, and looking at communities that are so far away, it does take much more than technology to make that happen. And that's where really patient capital comes in. So thank you again for being here today, and hopefully strategic philanthropy will become more part of your life as you move forward.